David somewhere in the Southland here. David, you're on the air with the Barely Legal radio program. Thanks for calling.
Well, hi there. So I am a comedy writer. And
oh, yeah. Wait, I remember you. You wrote a book called, what's the name of your book?
It's difficult to remember, so I'll remind you. It's Funny, the book. Mm-hmm. Everything you always wanted to know about comedy.
Right. And then now you have you got a follow-up question about...
I do. Yeah. I had asked before about the links that I was using.
Right. Because if you... Oh, yeah, I remember this. Because if you read this guy's book, he gives demonstrations of comedy, and then he gives links that you can watch. You go to these links, and you can watch the comedy unfold, thereby demonstrating his astute lessons.
I don't like being called astute, but whatever. We'll just go on and pretend it didn't happen. So let's see. In just a couple years ago, in 1995, when I was 6, I believe, I wrote a I wrote a bit for a sitcom I was doing called Duckman. It was an adult animated series with the voice of Jason Alexander. And it was an amusing little bit. And then it turned up again. It turned up again last year in, I believe, an award-winning or at least a very popular and successful commercial from Federal Express. Now, is it true that this is the sort of thing we could play on the air before I explain it, or shall I explain it?
Well, I don't want you to explain it, but I understand because you contacted me ahead of time, which is really smart. You contact me ahead of time. We can take a look at your problem, and then we can answer it on the air a little more thoroughly. But your basic question was, can a joke or a bit that you did years ago, if you see it, if someone clearly steals it and puts it on a commercial, do you have any rights to go after them?
Yeah, although I would amend that slightly. I mean, I've worked in the biz long enough to know that you have to have a pretty clear paper trail to prove that someone clearly stole it. But on the other hand, I can prove it's identical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, so let's go first with and see if the audience thinks that these are even remotely similar. Okay.
Okay.
Let's start with the Duckman audio.
Let me set it up slightly. The Duckman is a detective by trade, but that isn't going so well. So he and his partner set up a plumbing company, and he wants it to be first in the phone book. So he and his partner arrive at the house of a rich person and speak first to the butler, announcing them and their business.
I am Hans. May I help you, gentlemen?
You betcha, Heinz. We're from A1 Plumbing.
You're from A1 Plumbing?
Yes, we're from A1 Plumbing.
Ah, are these the men from A1 Plumbing?
Yes, they say they're from A.
All right, come on. We don't even have a plot yet.
I could listen to that all day. David Misch, that's funny stuff. That's funny stuff. Congratulations. I really like it. And it's one of those things that was just that's so hilarious yet so obvious. No one else, did it. And then there it was just sitting there, and you did it, and you're funny. Let's listen to the FedEx commercial so the audience can see if they're even remotely similar.
This is like 15 years later.
Auto repair.
Gary?
Hey, hung up.
Why do we have so many A's in our names?
So we're listed first in the phone book, gives us an edge.
No, FedEx can give us an edge.
Oh.
Well, FedEx ships auto parts from factories around the world. They clear them through customs, and that'll help us fix cars faster.
Great idea. You got a bright future here at A.
Supply Chain Solutions. FedEx. Solutions that matter.
Well, David, I'm sorry to say that was a auto.
Yeah, they left out the one. It's true, and that probably protects them.
The one, and it's auto mechanics. Your joke.
It's a whole different thing.
Your joke was plumbing.
Now when I hear it, I realize that.
I'm just embarrassed that you would even call this program. Okay, obviously they stole your joke. Well,
yeah, they may not have.
It's possible. It's possible that they didn't, and that's why, there is leeway, and the law doesn't allow us to pounce on something even if it's exactly similar. there has to be the other prong. The other prong is access. So So you would have to prove access to your material.
But it was nationally broadcast.
Okay, right. So they have. So you could infer, and a jury might say, I say they have access because it was on television, and you put one of those guys on the stand and say, do you have a television?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have cable? Yes. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, access is proved.
Right.
Then you go to substantial similarity. A child of 3 could tell you that it's substantially similar. But now they have to look at the other issue, which is what are we looking to protect here? We are protecting an idea for a joke, essentially. Perhaps this will be up to a trier of fact. Is this a creative expression of an idea that they stole, or did they just steal the idea? I think it's quite arguable that they stole the whole creative expression.
Yeah,
because the idea to me is how dumb it is to obsess over what position you are in the phone book, to the point where you will name your company something lame. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. Yeah. Okay, let anyone steal that idea that wants to. These guys stole the expression of the idea. Now, here's to play devil's advocate. Someone could say, and this would be the scenes affair doctrine. Well, in order to joke about the position of your business in the phone book, you couldn't go B, 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 B. You couldn't go zebra, zebra plumbing. You would have to say A. And you wouldn't say Aero plumbing or Alanis Morissette plumbing. These are the only two things with an A that I could come up with. But you couldn't do that because someone would say, that's not going to catch on because what we're most annoyed is the AAA, locksmith guy. Mm-hmm. And he thinks he's so clever. So there's only one way you could do it, and it's with the A's. So they said, I'm going to do the A's, and we'll do auto parts, so we're not going to do plumbing. And we're not going to add a 1 at the end. So I think that obviously it's not worth pursuing, but it's an excellent exercise for this radio show. This is what I live for. Now, let's get to the question of whether you would be the one to go after him or the studio that hired you. Were you under a work for hire agreement when
I was, counselor.
Okay. So you could not really go after him because they'd say you didn't have standing. The only people with standing is the studio who owns Duckman. Who is that?
Paramount.
Okay.
But they're this tiny organization. We can bully them.
All right. Well, you could call Paramount and say, "Hey, you're not adequately defending your copyrights, and are you entitled to?" I'm asking this to you, David. Are you entitled to back-end participation in this, in the distribution of this program?
Yes, that's true.
Arguably, you're getting you have damages from their negligent enforcement of the intellectual property. They have a fiduciary duty to maximize it for all.
And also, that's not even counting the emotional damages. I've been traumatized for weeks now.
Well, and that's not going to go anywhere. But
okay, never mind.
But either is my theory. So, but it's and then we get down to this. David Misch is the guy that wrote the joke that FedEx stole 15 years later. It took 15 years for some bright young ad exec, and these are the hippest of the hip that write these commercials, right?
Yeah.
These are people you and I can't touch because they're so young and they're so hip and they're so exciting. They wouldn't have anything to do with you or me.
Well, I can, but maybe you couldn't. Sure.
Okay. Well, I was thinking of Phil, the engineer. But these people are so hip, and yet it took them 15 years to steal your Duckman joke, or to think of it themselves. So in any case, you should be honored, and you should get some kind of Clio award. If they get a Clio for this, it belongs to you.
Great, I would take it.
Okay. I like it. We have
By the way, I have one other very quick thing. Can I tell you?
Please do.
I did another show many years ago, which was I called it Night of the Loving Dead, and we had to change the title because they were afraid George Romero would sue. But it was about a zombie who comes back from the dead, as zombies do, to date a girl he knew in high school. 2 years later, a movie came out called My Boyfriend's Back, the plot of which was a zombie comes back from the dead to date a girl he knew in high school. And I asked my manager, should I sue? And he said, it's a flop, who cares?
Your manager's pretty smart, and none of those things are protectable. But the punk that the punk that was afraid of fighting lawyers over Night of the Living Dead is a punk. Because he should have fought for that, and that's what the show's about. That was some creativity. It's a great title, and some paranoid freak stood in your way of expressing yourself and the audience's way of enjoying something very creative and clever. All right, Misch?
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.